Good morning. This is Kindle Scribe, and very excited to have with us today John Douglas Fisher. John is a prolific author, has a fantastic life experience, and welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Martin. Glad to be here.
Thank you. I think that what we've discussed, it just makes it a very, very interesting background for the build-up for you being an author. And just like to say that with John, he has been in the Air Force. He has run his own modeling agency. He has been a drummer and also an author. And John, I was just wondering if you could fill in some background there for me. It's a lot of information. Maybe I've missed a couple of things as well, but for sure, just jump in.
Okay. Well, I won't go too deep into the Air Force bit. I joined at the age of 16 because I didn't know what else to do after 17 schools and being thrown out of some of the best of them. My father was in the Air Force and it seemed a good idea to do the same thing. I dreamt of being a pilot, joined up, became a radar technician. Anyway, that was a big mistake, and I got the 12 years reduced to 3.
What?
Convinced the medical authorities that I was insane, or not quite, but anyway, at least they gave me a certificate to say I was fit. So maybe I'm the only one who's got a certificate to say sane. Anyway, after that, that's when I'd already learned to play the drums when I was about 12. Right. And so there I was at 20 on the streets, uniform in the dustbin. And I went back to drumming and became mainly a session drummer. That's when everyone makes mistakes in the studios during the day, and the managers or the people financing it start wringing their hands at the costs going up. That they get a session man in secretly, usually after 10 o'clock at night, while the group's in bed. Everything's played over again. Right. And then the group comes in the morning and says, "Oh, it sounds a lot better than we thought it was." So anyway, that was quite lucrative actually. But then that was in Liverpool area, and the scene then moved south, and I dropped out of that, and I went back into electronics, moved south, and then also met up with friends I knew, a number of girls who had all been trained at model agencies but weren't getting any work. And we said, well, let's start a modeling agency with a school.
Just like that.
So we rented a bunch of rooms, and all my friends came round and painted everything like mad. And so it was on zero capital. And then we started running these courses, and the girls with me, they were doing the training how to make up for photo modeling and or live model shows and things, how to walk, comportment, deportment, and so on. So anyway, that sort of was just starting to run out of money, and my father, who'd thrown me out of the house a couple of years earlier for just too many parties.
Sound like a rebel, John.
Yeah, then he sort of got quite proud of hearing I was in business, and he sort of came up to sort of try and help and rescue. But unfortunately, then he died suddenly at the airfield where his hobby was flying. And then, so I was on my own, and I closed that down and moved south. And so then got on to back into electronics again, and worked for a very famous manufacturer. I don't know if I can mention names, but
okay, it was a while ago, so don't worry about it.
Anyway, it'll always help boost their sales.
Yeah,
that was Vox amplifiers. Yeah, you see them on every stage, don't you? Then we left them and started up my own amplifier business with another engineer, a special practice amp that could be played really loud, got the same distortion without blowing the roof of the house off for recording, which you need sometimes. Anyway, that sort of didn't really work out, and I decided I wanted to travel, so I I met someone who was a teacher in Milan, and she said, "Oh, we're always looking for native teachers." So I thought, great. So she said, "Well, come down. I'll introduce you to the director." So I went home, back to my company, and they said, "Well, ready for work?" And I said, "No, I'm leaving." And I got my papers and jumped in the car and filled the whole boot. I had an MGB at the time. No, an MGC. And I filled the whole boot full of baked beans, tin of baked beans.
Right.
I think I worked out that with about 90 tins, I could live for 90 days. With camping gas. And this was supplemented with a whole box full of North Swiss soups, all these powdered soups,
right.
and that supplemented the diet. And so I'd go, and I lived in a little pension called Villa of the Flowers. There wasn't a villa anywhere to be seen, a flower anywhere to be seen. And anyway, it was quite quiet, but it wasn't till there was a strike, and I got the job teaching. And being an electronic engineer, I was able to convince them I knew all about language laboratories.
Right.
Although I'd never seen one in my life. But anyway, the girl who got me the job, she said, "I'll show you how it works," and that was all right. And so anyway, that was quite good until there was a strike, and I was, instead of working from dawn till dusk, I was in the pension at 10 in the morning. And then I noticed there were people coming in and out that had looked rather weird. Most beautiful looking women at about 10 o'clock in the morning in cocktail dresses. And guys with the collars turned up in raincoats. And then I found out that I'd been living in a brothel for about 6 months. And the rooms around me had been rented out by the hour. And so anyway,
adventurous life.
Yeah. So anyway, at that time, the water pump packed up on my car. So I invited my mum down. I said, "I'll show you Italy. And by the way, could you bring a water pump?" So that was the heaviest part of our luggage, I recall. And she slept one night there.
Right.
And then she said, "Are you all right?" when I knocked on the door.
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And she said, "I heard the most terrible noises in the night. I heard some awful groanings and awful screamings and shouting." And I said, "Well, why didn't you come and see if I was all right?" And she said, "Well, there's no sense in us both getting murdered." So anyway, down there I got into. I was teaching languages, and people said, "Where could we go and learn English in England in the summer, to sort of improve our English?" And so I organized this for them with the language school.
Yes.
Who swindled me out of my commission. So the next year I came back with twice as many, and of course phoned up Mum again, and she said, "If you think I'm coming to Italy, I'm not to stay in that place." So, but anyway, I said, "Can you get me 4 classrooms, 40 chairs, 4 conference tables, and 20 host families?" I said, "I've got a group of 40 students coming." And she said, "Okay, dear." And she did it. And I found myself in the language school business.
Fantastic.
And that built up. And then I started the same company in Germany.
Right.
And then opened up in Holland and Denmark and Sweden, and I ended up in 12 countries in the end.
There's one thing that's just coming across to me, John, and sorry for jumping in. I mean, I love it, right? It's very colourful past and everything. I'm not sure everybody would have the same background. Yes, cheers. Oh, it's water, by the way. It is water.
This is tea with a drop of rum.
Yeah.
But I went easy on the tea.
But and the fact that it's been such a colourful career, and I mean, and certainly an adventurous one at that. I know I've said it twice now, but I think that leads quite nicely into your creativity for your author work, and the book that you've written, which is The Fatal Camino. And I know we're working together at the moment on the 2nd edition of The Fatal Camino. And I just wonder if you just could give us a a background into that book and just, give our listeners and our potential readers a bit of a hook.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've read lots of little things, written a lot of things in the past, and never got anything published. Some of it was ghost writing for other people who wanted vanity books, and but I always sort of played around with stories and ideas, and I wrote a series of ghost stories, which RTL actually took on the first ghost story as a project. Then, and it came to a pass that in my real life, I felt like a break, wanted to get away from things, and I'd heard about the Camino from such a lot of people and how it'd been a life-changing experience for them. I decided to walk the Camino. So I researched it, and I think most people have seen the film The Way and things like that. And I got talking to people, and I became more inspired. And then a friend gave me a map and said, "Here is a Camino map for when you go in May." And I looked at the map, and I love maps, and so I looked at the detail, and I noticed there were little crosses along irregular points along the side of the trail.
Right.
I found out these were called way crosses, and I thought, what are they for? Are they graves, or are they just markers, whatever? So anyway, I imagined if there were graves, who would be buried there?
Right.
And if they were, who buried them? Were they executed, or were they murdered, or
right?
And so I thought, who would do it? And then I thought of who might do it. And then this idea came up about pilgrims being abducted along the Camino and by our baddie, and then and that gave me the idea. And the other thing is, then I thought is not only do I walk it, which I did, and met some fantastic people, and you have some amazing discussions with people along there as well.
Right.
But also it became like a location mission, because everywhere I'd written about, I proceeded to visit that place and photograph it, so that the book would be really authentic. And in fact, it was the case in some places. When I got there, it gave me even more ideas. It was better than I imagined. So that was it.
And I was going to ask, just for those listeners and potential readers who are not sure what the Camino way is, could you tell us where it is in that part of the world?
Yes. Well, the Camino way, actually, there are many, many of them, because they have a symbol, the shell, which is a bit like spreading fingers, which symbolizes different routes starting from different ways. So they have like the Napoleon way, which is known as the French route as well, the Portuguese way, there's the English way, which starts in the north from a northern port. So there are about several different ways, but they all come together, just like the sign on the shelf. And this shell symbolizes this gathering of the routes. And the main route, and the route I walked, was the Camino Frances, the Napoleon way, although I doubt if he actually walked it.
That's an interesting.
It's probably, yes, or if he did, it was probably with about 30,000 men. But anyway, this is the longest route and runs parallel to the north coast of Spain. Wow. So I started in Pamplona, where all the bulls running once a year, and more or less always heading west to come to the town or city of Santiago de Compostela, where the bones of St. James, which give it the name, the Way of St. James for the English language, the bones are there under the altar, so they tell us, and can be visited and looked at and prayed at.
Beautiful part of the world, John.
That's yes. I loved it because the scenery is so different. Sometimes I imagine walking across the plains in America. There's just corn, as far as you can see, and then you come to the next mountain range, and it's mountainous and it's rocky and it's woody, and it gets greener as you head west. Yeah, very, very interesting.
Sounds beautiful. It sounds good. I've never been there.
Yeah,
one part of the world I haven't been to yet.
Right.
So I just want to pop onto the the next thing. So this is how you got the idea for the Fatal Camino book, and and you've walked it yourself. So tell me about the. It was interesting earlier when you talked about RTL France, but I'm interested in understanding what was your first writing success.
Yes, it was a great success. But not for me. Right. My father was so worried after my 17 school experience. Right. He thought, is our son a congenital idiot, or has he just had a bit of a bad time with so many schools? He says, but he was really worried. So his solution was to give me an essay a day to write.
Oh wow!
And unfortunately, also a page of mathematics. So each day he'd give me a title.
Right.
But he was giving me and my father was very imaginative sort of man, but the titles he gave me were awful. The things like My Hometown, and or My Favorite Holiday, or Our Last Holiday, and really not. Anyway, one day he was late for work.
Right.
Because my father could never get up in the morning. And in fact, in the war, he slept in and actually missed a mission. So anyway, he rushed out the door and said, you choose something, use your initiative. Yeah. So I did. And I wrote, instead of an essay, in fact, it was about 8 pages, handwritten. And I named it The Day in the Life of a Bus Conductor. Wow. And I sort of, it was really a bit of a common course family. And anyway, I wrote this story, and he came home and he was annoyed. He said, what's this rubbish? What day in the life of a bus conductor? Terrible. Anyway, he was really, really angry, and he refused to read it till the end. And my mother read it, and then an auntie read it, and she says, oh, have you read this? She says, it's rather funny. So anyway, my mother was talking to another lady, friend, and my mother said, yeah, my husband was really angry. John wrote this as homework and really bad, and he was very angry. And the lady said, oh, may I take it with me? I'd love to show it to my daughter. So my mother said, yeah, sure, if you like. So I didn't think anything of it. And we heard 3 months later that the girl had copied it and submitted it as a scholarship essay.
Really?
She was accepted in the school that turned me down. So she went to this wonderful school, which had been school number 18 for me, so it didn't happen. And I went to university, and I don't know what happened after that. Maybe she became a professor of literature or whatever, who knows. So that was a success.
What a success, yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
But not for me. But anyway, it sort of, I was always then jotting things from about the age of 12.
I mean, it's such a colourful experience, John. I mean, everything that's been in your life so far. As I said, we've had, so for those listeners out there, John and myself have had a couple of chats in between, and we've been working on some project work together. And it's just such a colourful background and a colourful history. It's why, it's just good to listen to what John has got to say, and it still makes me giggle. It still makes me giggle a lot. Are you okay with reading a snippet of your book for us for the second edition launch? And but by the way, for those listeners out there, just let you know that the second edition launch is going to be it's targeted for the 13th of August. And that will also be supported with an audiobook. So that's all work in progress, and really excited to hear about this book and to see it being launched, and for John to get his rightful credits without somebody else taking it, of course. So, are you okay to give us a brief?
Yes. I'd be delighted to do that.
Great, John. So, if you have it, then it would be wonderful to listen.
Yeah. This first chapter is short and is called Sugar. It was a room without pictures. So small, it made a phone booth look like a ballroom. A shadowy outline of a missing crucifix marked the wall above the grey tubular metal bed, bolted to the glossy grey concrete floor. The air was tinged with carbolic disinfectant and a slight hint of urine. An old lawnmower tuckered outside below the postage stamp side window, just below the ceiling. Harsh light recessed into the ceiling and covered in unbreakable glass, banned all shadow. A body lay under a shroud on the bed. The outside door bolt scraped. Bed springs squeaked as the head onto the white sheet turned towards the door. Footsteps entered. The door closed with a heavy, insulated thump. The bolt scraped again, and footsteps receded as the night orderly returned to his cramped office. "Is that you, my little sugar?" A raw purr with an accent of a girl raised in the Mississippi Delta rasped onto the sheet. She made no attempt to remove the sheet. A patch below the shape of her nose was damp from her breath and trembled like a diaphragm when she spoke. "Yes, Mummy, it's me." A childlike falsetto whimpered as the visitor sank slowly to sit on the horsehair mattress. He sat slightly hunched, knees pressed together, feet turned inwards. A black baseball cap with a long peak hid his features. "You're late." "I was up late in the night, Mummy. I saved another Eva from the devil." "Good," she purred. "Death is the only way to save them, sugar. Their blood on our sacred Camino washes away their sins." "Satan is tireless, Mummy," he sighed. "There's always a new Eva on the Camino." A whine tinged the small voice. "You're doing the Lord's work, sugar. You're going to take your place next to the Lord in heaven as your reward. No matter how many Evas Satan sends, sugar, you have to save them all. Only through spilling their blood on our Camino can they be saved. I'm doing my bestest best, Mummy, my bestest best. For both our sakes, sugar, kill them, or we shall burn in the flames of hell."
Oh my gosh.
So,
psychological.
Hope that came out all right.
It did. So thank you, John, for that. It was actually, that was a real treat, because it was you can tell that there's many twists, and as you're a great storyteller, actually, because I can sense it and feel it and so on. I did flinch at the smell of pee, by the way, but I could sense it and feel it, and it felt as if I was there watching them. So it's and what a little twist at the end. I mean, poor Sugar. I feel sorry for Sugar just now. Brilliant parenting.
Yes. And his mum says he's always a good boy to me.
So, but it really does sound like a true psychological thriller based in the most beautiful part of the world in Portugal, along the Camino Way. And I love the background of the story where you saw the crosses at certain points of the pilgrimage route. Sounds amazing. Really does sound amazing.
Yes, I felt it is a bit of a road movie sort of format. It rather than just a murders in Pamplona, then it would be a story about a detective in a police work in a town. Yeah. I wanted to keep it moving, of course, and the killer is tracking them the whole time. So it moves along the Camino, and which made it very interesting, visiting all the different places. So.
Can you tell us? So, for the listeners out there who are very interested in this book, this is it's all based around a woman detective. Do you want to tell us a bit about her and the type of person she is? It sounds very interesting.
Well, Jane is a young woman who's decided to trace the footsteps of her sister, her twin sister, who's missing along the Camino. She's there as out of guilt, a mission driven by guilt. She feels she has to visit the places her sister visits. Took her time to work up the courage to do it. And while she's walking in Pamplona, she comes across a man who she finds terribly obnoxious. This is Dan Brady, ex-army journalist, bit of a chip on his shoulder, an orphan as well. And so he's not really in love with religion. He's there to keep his job and interview pilgrims, and he feels it's all a load of rubbish, but he needs his job. And so they completely conflict the views. They decide to just keep away from each other, and then they're thrown together when she discovers a body, which involves them and brings them in the sights of the killer. So they virtually become the prey and are sort of thrown together in the end with other two characters who are accompanying Jane, but in the background. In fact, they become more involved as the story carries on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like there's a lot of courage, and I mean the creativity. The one thing that's coming, because I'm doing the editorial review just now. The one thing that is jumping out at me throughout the entire book is that how you're able to portray the characters with such different personalities. You know, they're believable, and when they're doing their accents, and when they're, I'm not going to give anything away, by the way, if any of the listeners or potential readers out there want to see it. The book is going to be launched on the 13th of August with the audiobook following. Okay, so it's the Fatal Camino, second edition. The first edition is already there, so please feel free to check it out. But it's the characters and the setting and the scenery. You know, it's very real. It feels very real. You know, it's not overplayed. They feel like real people who I would meet. You know, down the pub.
Yes, in fact, one reader said to me, "I would never walk the Camino," but he said, "Now I feel I've been there."
It's true.
And two other readers wrote and reported, said they'd walked the Camino, and they said it was really a revisit for them. So I thought the accuracy of locations was important, and of course it gives excellent chance to have the different characters pop up at different times. The corrupt president of the Camino Trust, and the reasons for covering up the murders and things like this. So and they do crop up at the certain places along the Camino, and where Dan and Jane are going on their mission, and where they decide they're going to try and catch this traitor.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I shouldn't be smiling because it is a pretty gruesome book for anybody who's into this gruesome psychological, psychopathic types of work. But it's brilliant. It is a brilliant book.
I did have two writers actually who do write crime novels, and they just said, "We find the setting unique. We wish we'd thought of it." Especially the ending.
Don't share your TypeScript, John. Just don't share it. Keep that one to you.
Yeah.
I feel this has been a great podcast, learning about you, your early lives, the experiences you've had, and how you've come into being an author. Are there any parting words that you want to give your listeners?
Well, I would like to say that if you read the book, I hope you really enjoy it. And I hope that not only does it entertain you and give you a little bit of suspense, but I'm sure we all have enough suspense in our lives when all the bills arrive at the end of every month. But I think also, I hope it might give you an appetite for the Camino itself, because I've become a great fan of the Camino. I find it's done so many people so much good in their lives, and I find that fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much, John, and thanks for giving me your time this morning. It's been a real pleasure having you here, and yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Martin, thank you for your time, and it's been a pleasure for me too.
Well, you're welcome. Most welcome.